Hello. Good evening, folks. Hope everybody's well. Sorry about not having a stream last week. Obviously, I was working on the videos, and I think it's been quite a productive few week. It's a good start, isn't it? It's been a productive few weeks. What with having got two videos done back to back as well with Blue Sunshine and Ichi the Killer. So I hope you enjoyed those. It was fun writing them. And currently, hello. Currently, I am actually working on Exorcist 2 because I've got a trilogy. I'm probably going to do them as 3 videos. Trilogy of reviews, critiques of Exorcist 2, Exorcist 3, and the Ninth Configuration. In that order. And the reason being, it should actually be really Exorcist 2, Ninth Configuration, and Exorcist 3. But I'm going to do it out of order because it just seems to make more sense. Because if any of you have seen the Ninth Configuration, it is a little bit kind of out of left field when it comes to the Exorcist films. I will not be doing the prequels. I might mention them. I don't know. I might do an addendum to all of that. Just kind of go through the prequels and a little bit about the original. So we'll see how that goes. But I've watched the film twice, and I'm getting some ideas about sort of how to get into it. I did start writing it as well, so things are rolling on that already, and hopefully this weekend I will at least get it written. Next week for me at work, because I'm back to work like kind of for the full week, it's going to be kind of, I've got to see how that goes. Your pronunciation of Kakihara was spot on. It's difficult to get those right, and I was listening to the pronunciation of the name throughout the film, and different characters pronounce it somewhat differently. So it's really kind of tricky. But hopefully I got it roughly there at the very least. But isn't that a weird, mad film? I absolutely enjoyed the hell out of that one because I did get to watch the. Have I got it there? Yeah, there it is. Let me just grab that. So I got this as part of kind of that research to see, kind of what was in there. I believe that was a series, and that's like the pilot episode of it or something like that. So it was interesting to see this and relate it to the film and stuff. It was a good one to do. Pazuzu, bless you. Yes. Exorcist 2 is a very strange film, to say the least. I think there's a lot of ideas, not all of them that pan out. I think it's a film that is deeply, deeply flawed in so many ways, but it does have a grain of interest in there. It's certainly not as bad a film as some people kind of make it out to be. Even Mark Kermode, funny enough, who I would have expected to be a little bit more generous towards a film like that. It's it's kind of a tough one to approach in some respects. But that, and then Exorcist 3. Exorcist 3 is a very different film as well. And then when you see the Ninth Configuration, which a lot of people don't realise is an Exorcist sequel. In the series of books, it was. Exorcist 3 was supposed to be quite different as well, and this is a good version. There's a director's cut version on here as well as the theatrical. So how much I touch on the director's cut versus the theatrical, I'm not entirely sure. I'll probably concentrate on the theatrical and make reference to the director's version on that. Exorcist 3 is incredible, not perfect, but several awesome scenes and superb acting. It's a fascinating film. In fact, I think it actually stands as probably one of the best of the Exorcist films in either version. Some people had a bit of a problem with Exorcist 3. I'm not one of those people. I think it's fantastic. Kermode has some interesting opinions and tastes, but he is also among in others very pro censorship in the case of Centipede 2. Really? I didn't realise that. Ghost Ship. Very nice, light, summery beer. Mark Kermode, I can't trust him. I want to like him, but he's also obsessed with woke politics. He's definitely very left-leaning. I wouldn't say he's obsessed with woke politics, although his mind has been changed on certain films that he found to be brilliant at one point. I think Straw Dogs he's changed his position very heavily on since he made the documentary and stuff like that. He generally seems like a decent bloke. I ain't going to hold his politics against him on that. I don't think he's ever said anything that's supposed to be particularly harmful. I don't know what the pro-censorship thing for Human Centipede 2 was. I would have to look that up. I know he's kind of brushed up against a few films that he's gone, this is kind of beyond the pale. Which is a little ironic, really, considering where he came from, because critically speaking, he comes from a very similar place to me. Into horrors and all that kind of stuff. And yeah. I mean, I've been critical of films in ways that some people would kind of describe as. I've been criticised for being woke. I don't think I'm on that extreme. I do write about certain things which people kind of automatically sort of shuffle in there, which is why there's that semi-apology in the Ichi review. For instance, in that film, there was a whole bunch of stuff basically that kind of adds up to being the film amounting to essentially looking at what you might call these days as a toxic masculinity. And I avoided very specifically using that phrase, but the film is very, very male centric in its kind of way that it looks at violence and stuff like that, and where it comes from, and all that sort of stuff. So I kind of explored that end of it as well, to kind of because I think that's an interesting part of it. This is very, very violent, very anti-woman kind of world which these characters live in. And it's fascinating to sort of think about. Kerry says, and hello, Kerry. Always have to give Kerry the shout out there. Nearly forgot this week. Exorcist is my favourite sequel to a horror movie. Ed Flanders is excellent as Dyer. Yeah, it is, and it is a fantastic film. Ghost Ship, not bad, quite zingy and citrusy. Yes, that's the thing. It takes a little getting used to if you're not an ale drinker, particularly a citrus pale. It's very, very sharp flavour, very hoppy. It is nice. So in the summer, because it is that lighter, it's there, and then it's sort of the flavour kind of dissipates. It's really quite nice. Did you ever see a David Hess film called Hitchhike? No, I haven't actually. I will have to look out for that. If you can find a link to it, or a link to a DVD or something like that, then shove it on Ramblaholics. Human Centipede 2, Commode said he was glad the BBFC cut the film, was disappointed that the cuts didn't make it any better. It was never going to. And the irony of Human Centipede 2 is that it is a direct kind of response to the critics of the first film. It's a sort of answering back to those people. I kind of said that I think in the review, I that got taken down by Ilona 6, no less. You know, if I get copyright strikes from the famous and the influential. That's how important I am. I kind of said in it the premise, which is that kind of response to like, well, this is what it would be if it really was that influential. This is what you would see. But that premise is really, really drawn out way too far. Oh yeah, I totally get where you're coming from, DC. The reason why I say that, and the thing is, when I say about that kind of stuff, that there is a misogyny in there. It's not how I feel necessarily about the film overall. Sometimes it's a point of view, just as misandry would be, or racism could be, or any of those things. Sometimes the characters or the kind of world that the story takes place in is that doesn't necessarily mean that the film is being those things. It can literally be showing you something to show the ugliness of it. In a way that, you know, the sexual violence in something like Last House on the Left is not saying that this is a good thing. But you can absolutely sort of say that those characters have certain qualities, which is kind of why I go into that sort of stuff. And the problem is, these days particularly, you know, you say those words and they're like a trigger, and people respond to them feeling that you're using it in bad faith, I guess. So yeah, it is one of those things. I do try to identify certain aspects of the characters, particularly with horror films. It's going to be negative aspects, because you need to identify those in order to kind of like try to frame where the story is coming from. I think there's very few films that I have kind of like looked at and went, no, this film definitely is. I think New York Ripper is one of those films, as a for instance. And I know that's not necessarily a very popular opinion, but I think I've kind of like had a few people sort of go, yeah, you know what, I think you're right as well. And, you know, you're always free to disagree when it comes to those kind of things. These things are just my opinion and my take, and that's all it is. It's because it's very rarely misandry in a film. There is sometimes, you know, you get stuff like the Ghostbusters 2016, which is could be accused of that, and I think I mentioned that, at least something to that extent, in whatever reviews I've done, and I think they were mostly written. It does happen, but it's a lot rarer. And I think that's partly, you know, in the horror film world, it's also, you know, the female characters tend to be the victims, in terms of, or at least the kind of focus of the killers and that sort of stuff. Although when you look at the numbers, it tends to be, at least during the Video Nasties days, the body count tended to favour the guys. I say favour, but the majority of the dead people in horror films tend to be guys. Then it's kind of, but the focus of the murder tends to be, or the killer tends to be, the final girl, as a for instance. But you don't have to kind of take my word for it. I mean, just look into it yourself, and if you see differently, then you know, I'd be interested in seeing a video about that. I genuinely would. I do like to see the kind of difference in opinions when it comes to those kind of things. It's it's kind of interesting. But I do know that when I go into some of those things, and sometimes it's more important than others. And I think it was very important in Ichi to kind of bring up those kind of issues, because that stuff that they do to the female characters within that, although there is the exception of Karen, that stuff that they do in those films is informing, you know, upon the male characters predominantly. It's not there just as a spectacle of, or, you know, kind of beat up the woman, as opposed to, like I say, Lucio Fulci's New York Ripper, which feels much more like a film that's made by someone who does hate women. And there's plenty of off-screen evidence that Fulci was kind of not a nice guy to women. Charlie's Angels 2019 was misandressed in the extreme. I'd never seen that film, and I never will. The Charlie's Angels films were just like kind of, yeah. Oh, what an awful film. It's one reason why why I'm fond of you, Glenn. We can disagree as gentlemen, and I don't know why would we? Because the whole point of what I do is, it's to prompt discussion, and I've engaged with people who have been really quite vehemently against some of the stuff that I've said, and it's usually worked out okay. I try not to be hyperbolic when I kind of talk about some of the characters and things like that, and character traits and aspects of the stories, because I think that looking at them and trying to give them a sort of level-headed appraisal usually bears out better results, although not in the algorithm. If I was going, I'd get far better views if I took literally one very, very strong political view, whether it be on the right or the left. I would probably get a lot more kind of viewers, but that's not what I do. I try to be kind of cooler and calmer and talk about this, and try to prompt discussion, and that's kind of important thing. But I do appreciate that, Frank. That's nice of you to say. How's theatre going, Glenn? Is it closed? Oh, we've got talk about a couple of shows. A couple of people got in contact about, can we do our show here, including a very big one in the new year. But I've got no manager. I've got no manager at my theatre. It's just me. And it's like this big show in particular needs someone with experience and knowledge to kind of do all that admin stuff and marketing stuff and all that kind of stuff. And it's and not least actually kind of run a front of house crew for the shows themselves, which are usually sellouts, the full house, for 5 days solid. And it's like, especially when you get to Saturday and it gets all a bit rowdy and that kind of stuff, it requires somebody who knows what they're doing, and we haven't got that at the moment. And I'm talking to my bosses, and hopefully we will get something sorted, but we will see. We will see. That would make you the manager then. No, unfortunately, they won't give me that title, because technically I can't even call myself chief technician, which is what I am in the theatre. So if I talk to companies that are coming or wanted to come, I'm the chief technician. That's how I will always address myself, because that's what the industry understands. But I can't call myself that, and I can't call myself the manager. And I wouldn't call myself a theatre manager, because it's a very specific job. Involves a lot of finance and people management and admin and selling tickets and correcting problems and customer service, and it's like kind of I'm not the most social of people. So somebody comes at me all bullish going, I don't want my ticket anymore, I want a refund. Our policy is we don't do refunds on tickets, and I won't go too far on that. Omen 2 is great. I just rewatched all of the Omens, all the classic Omens. So 1, 2, and 3. 1 has become my favourite. I always remember being slightly bored by 1 when I first watched it, which is years ago, and always preferring 2. But as the series sort of went along, it kind of loses track of its kind of leveler head. I mean, it's all a bit outrageous anyway. But 2's kind of like it's still got its feet more or less on the ground. But by the time it gets to 3, it gets so hyperbolic, it's unreal. And it's still a fun film. But my God, I mean, Sam Neill's not a bad actor at all. But talk about hamming it up. I don't think he really kind of could quite believe what he was having to say as a character. It does. It gets all very fire and brimstone-y kind of stuff, which you'd expect to an extent. But it kind of lost me at the point where he's got all his acolytes kind of in front of him in that big arena, and he's given the full-on Antichrist speech. Yeah, it it kind of lost me as it went along, but still, it's still fun to watch. You, da, 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 da. What's going to happen to Hollywood, really? Hollywood will find its balance again at some point. There's only so much money they're going to be willing to lose. It's either that or all the studios will lose all of their money and it'll just be Disney. And they'll subsist on the fact that, everybody wants films and they don't really care much these days what the quality is. Most of the public never really did, to be quite fair. But, yeah, I'm about to kind of cancel my cinema subscription, which is a shame, really, because I like the company that do it, but the films that I just don't want to sit through them anymore. I've said it before. I'm kind of moving away from the Hollywood stuff. If it's anything that comes out, I'll wait till it comes out on Blu-ray and I'll buy it. And if they stop doing the Blu-rays of current releases, then I won't see current releases. It sounds very much at odds with being a film critic type, but I've got more than enough stuff to watch from the past. I just so tired of half-assed remakes and shitty sequels and just films that don't have any passion. They're just these kind of demographic-driven vehicles to kind of try and make you money. I mean, that is a function of cinemas, obviously, or the studios. Is they're there to make money, but the art seems to have largely gone out of it. There's far too few films that are of any decent quality, and not to say the least that the cinema going experience has really, really dropped. How many times do you have to deal with people talking in the theatre and all that kind of stuff, and just find it a less and less comfortable experience as time goes on. To be honest, I want to see Hollywood reap what they've sown and go out of business. I've had enough of their rubbish and hubris. I've said for a few years, that Hollywood is on a decline at this point, and I think it's true. I don't think COVID is the be all and end all, but I think it's opened up the idea that, particularly because Netflix and Amazon and the likes are doing films and stuff like that now, that people are kind of cottoning on to the fact that there's a bigger film world out there. You don't have to be the big screen releases. In fact, I think the exclusionary aspect of cinema, in that likes of Disney and so on, dominate the screen, and time, literal kind of time and real estate, to the detriment of just about everything else that that they're going to find they're going to struggle to sort of claw their way back. They may well do, but I think there's a sea change coming. And to be honest, the cinema going experience, like I say, is just not what it was. I think it's lost a lot of its magic. People at home, many people have reasonably big TVs and that kind of stuff. And as much as Lynch the likes of David Lynch, and Christopher Nolan, and so on, will understandably be upset at that kind of stuff. I think it's the way it's going. What I do hope, though, is that small indie cinemas will, they're kind of like the art house type cinemas, and it's not saying that they only play Polish films that have a reverse timeline or some shit like that, but films that theatres that curate their screenings much better. I think that's the way to go when it comes to cinema. Cinemas that make the experience a lot more nice and a lot more enjoyable, a lot more welcoming. That kind of thing. Yeah, people will get more social when this bullshit COVID. I don't know. I mean, for one, I don't have much desire to go back to pubs particularly. I'll do it occasionally. I used to be out and about all the time, all that kind of stuff. I don't particularly want to go back into a cinema. It's not a COVID thing. It's just I don't see the attraction of it anymore, and I'm not, like I say, I'm not a particularly sociable person anyway. So the idea of kind of hanging out with a bunch of people, generally speaking, I'm just not that interested in. Every time I go to the cinema, I'm just praying that I'm the only one in there, or at least, one of a handful of people in there, and you can't run a multiplex cinema like that, unfortunately. Oh dear. It was once the film utterly tanked that the claims of bigotry and misogyny began. Yeah, yes, there was a certain amount of that. There was a pushback from the studios, which was a big mistake because they alienated the existing audience. Big Star, and that was a problem when you do that. You can't, as much as the studios and the stars are very kind of like, they're right. They have a right to their own opinion and that kind of stuff. But it's a bit like criticizing, or at least like criticizing your patrons at a restaurant who say there's a bit too much salt in this, and going, well, go somewhere else. We didn't make this meal for you. It's like, well, I paid for it. And if your customers are all being driven away because you're going, this film is not for you, then you've got a problem. But they more and more sort of they're constantly going for the younger audience, and that's how they perceive the audience is those sensibilities, and it's not always true, and it's not always that extreme, but they're kind of forsaking the older audience, and that came around with like the PG-13 sort of thing, or the 12 rating. That they wanted a category where they could do some stuff, but still retain the younger audience. But obviously at 12, 8, it's not a 15. You can't put quite as much stuff in it. Look at Black Widow, flopped at cinema, flopped on Disney Plus. Yeah, that was a bit of a mess. I'm wondering how that lawsuit's going. I didn't see it. I'd wanted to see a Black Widow film, but it seems very oddly placed in the whole kind of thing, because now the character's, dead and gone. Yeah, weird. Very weird. $19.99 price on Disney. Yeah, you know why they're doing that though, don't you? It's because they know that 3 or 4 people are likely to be watching it. When you're a sad loner like me, then that's not the case. And so obviously I'm paying about, 4 times more than I should be. Richard says, tell you something, Glenn, and everyone, it's the worst time for Sainsbury's to stop selling physical media. I don't know how well they were doing with that kind of stuff. I suspect Amazon will kind of keep doing it regardless, It's a case of the distributors. I see no reason why Arrow, the likes of Arrow, wouldn't keep that sort of stuff up. Those specialist companies, because that's their business model anyway. Yes, they've got a digital channel and stuff like that, but they know that the collector's market is, worth something. What I suspect is that you will find a certain amount of increase in price as demand sort of goes down for DVD and that kind of stuff in general. But yeah, we will see. Glenn, you're alone by choice, admit it. I'm not entirely alone. I do have friends, but I don't spend much time kind of socialising. And it is by choice. I like my own time. I like my own company enough to not be worried about it. Very different to when I was much younger. I've got this place, I've got all my movies, I've got my computer, I've got, stuff like this that I do. I consider this a form of socialising, although it is, somewhat removed and that kind of stuff. Which means, you can't touch me, but you can pretend to. Arrow's run by a bunch of retards. I wouldn't say that. They've made some magnificent releases. They have made a few cock-ups along the way as well, but I think they're a relatively small company, so I can imagine there's a potential for a lot of things to go wrong. Physical media all the way for me. Yeah, it's funny. My landlord, occasionally when he sort of comes in here, is like kind of, it just blows his mind how many of these things I got. He thinks it's a bit ridiculous. There's no way Arrow, Second Sight, and 100 Films are going to stop making physical media. Far too many collectors, and I think the collectors market will endure because we're serious about that sort of stuff. It's kind of important to us. So wherever possible, I try to buy new. It's not always possible, you get some of those expensive box sets, you kind of go, but I always feel slightly guilty when I do that, because I go, this is these guys' revenue, and they're not getting a penny. Oh dear. What I'll do is I'll put the, because I'll just refresh the link in the chat, so if you start getting yourselves kind of hooked up and ready to go, we will get going in a little while. Shall we begin the film? I've got about 25 minutes yet before we start the film, and then we'll get cracking. I got told that people were missing their Ramblaholics and that kind of stuff, so I figured a nice sort of compromise would be to do like an hour of chat and then the film, and then we get to kind of chill out with the film and that kind of stuff. Very excitingly, not film related, I managed to picked myself up a tracking mount for my telescope, which is going to be great. This thing will kind of follow stars, and it's got GPS, so it can kind of like point itself in the right direction. I go, find Jupiter for me, and it'll line up. Haven't had a chance to try it out yet, so hopefully tomorrow night, because I think it's going to be too cloudy tonight. If not tomorrow, I believe Monday night should be clear. I'm really looking forward to it. It's going to be a lot of fun, and that will allow me to do better photography and stuff like that, and use my highest power lens, which is a 2.3mm lens, which is very hard to use with a traditional setup, because you focus on Jupiter, and it's going across the your plane of vision like that, with this thing. So you're constantly having to line up and then trying to focus, line up, focus, pain in the arse. Are we getting treated to a watch along of Mad Foxes again? Well, if enough people want it in the Ramblaholics, then we can do that again. Oh dear. Yeah. Fess up, Glenn. You're going to make close-up videos of the moon and tell us about cities. Have you seen some of those? Oh my god! There was one guy who was convinced that there was a reflection of the Earth on the moon. Somebody who said Disneyland was laid out to kind of to reflect the pattern of the moon and all that kind of stuff. It's really weird. There's some very, very, very strange people out there. Kind of makes you think that some of the nutters of today are relatively sane. They're really, really strange. How does one join the Ramblaholics? On Facebook, if you go to my page and send me a message, I will send you an invite. That's how it works. Now, I would say you don't have to friend me, but you have to friend me because Facebook demands it for whatever reason. So if you're friends on Facebook, send me a message. I will add you into the Ramblaholics. You'll be able to post there. I think that's how it works. It's been a while since anybody's joined. But there you go. See, 4K, as far as I understand it, you've got to have something like in the range of a 60-inch TV before it actually makes any difference. I find this rush for high def is a little bit ridiculous. Now, I mean, there's a good argument for Blu-ray, although I'm pretty sure they've downgraded a lot of DVDs just for the hell of it. Dear oh dear. Ghostbusters 16 began a trend of woke filmmaking where politics took centre stage. I wouldn't say that. I would say that it was one of those films that kind of had a political kind of leaning, for sure. I think the director was always kind of like interested in that sort of spin on a film. I think its biggest crime was not that it what it was particularly, although for a Ghostbusters fan it was a real turn-off. I think it was as much to do with the way they handled the audience and doing something stupid like putting kind of inbuilt jokes into the film that the audience were cellar-dwelling mama's boys. That kind of stuff was ridiculous. And very counterproductive because it got the film all the wrong attention, and that's why it failed. I did see it at the cinema. I was reluctant to, but at the time I was writing for, frankly, Green Bay, and it kind of needed covering, so I went and seen it. I probably wouldn't have gone and watched it otherwise. And I haven't seen it since. I did get it out of my workplace's library on a couple of occasions, thinking, right, I'm going to sit down and rewatch it and just see if it's as bad as I remember it. And I never got round to rewatching it. It just sort of sat there until I had to send it back. I might join the Ramblaholics. Yep, absolutely, you can do that. Drop me a message on Facebook and I will sort it as soon as I see those things. If I can't sort it, then we will figure it out. It can sometimes be a little awkward. Facebook can be a bit weird. You enjoyed Ghostbusters 2016? Oh yeah, okay. I thought it was a pretty bad film. My biggest gripe with the film was the tone of the comedy. To be honest with you. It's not the politics even, because it's just how the comedy runs is very kind of SNL sort of stuff, which you could say the same about the original cast. Is obviously the original cast of Ghostbusters were SNL alumni, but a lot of these actors that sort of come out of that, Steve Carell and all those kind of people, and so on and so forth. There's tons of them, and they all have that really weird kind of mugging kind of aspect to their acting. It's all very turned up to 15 kind of thing, and I don't enjoy it. It's a very, very American sense of humour, and it doesn't travel very well. And yeah, I mean, I'd say there was bits of Ghostbusters 2016 that I enjoyed, but overall, it was just loud, screamy, not in a kind of horror screamy kind of way either. It's a lot of yelling at the camera and mugging and that kind of stuff. It's just too much. It's just too much. You just hate women, don't you, Glenn? No, I love women. I think, I mean, that's the thing with my writing and stuff like that, because I do cover those bits in certain films, and the reason is, it's not because I specifically go out and look for that stuff, right? That's not the reason why I look for that, get that stuff in the film. I'm not starting off from point one and going, got to find that way through there. That's absolutely not it. It's about exploring the story and stuff like that, and finding those things in there when it pops up. The good example that I give often is Human Experiments, that Video Nasties film. That's a women in prison film, generally speaking, not a genre that's generally given to particularly treating female characters nicely. Kind of the point of it. But Human Experiments, although it's a very dull film on the whole, has a certain bent in that direction, and it's made obvious by a couple of clues. And the other one, which I give quite often, is Cannibal Man, which has a gay interest which runs through it. So when those things are in there and they're not necessarily particularly obvious, I do sort of pick up on those things, and sometimes it kind of informs upon the film in its entirety. The Witch Who Came from the Sea, which I think is a fantastic film, is an interesting one, and that is a good example of a film where the central character and the way we see this world is very misandrist, as if you want an example, because it's seen through the eyes of Molly, who is a very heavily abused young girl, abused by her father, and she goes off on a man-killing spree, essentially. So those you want another example, there you go. But it's an interesting subject, and yeah, I just wish people would be kind of a little bit less hyperbolic about a lot of this stuff. Exploring those ideas and those perspectives and that kind of stuff is kind of what interests me. Cannibal Man is my favourite superhero. It's a great film, and I believe it's just got a Blu-ray release in America, and it might be getting one here as well, which I will really, really be interested in. It's a fascinating film, and the gay interest part of it, it becomes very obvious at one point. You've got like Nestor and you got the two characters. I can't remember both the characters' names. Nestor's the rich guy, and there's this kind of like closening bond which goes on between the two characters, and it sort of culminates at one point in a frolicking in the swimming pool. Although they're not doing anything sexual, it's the way it's filmed, the way it's kind of their closeness and all that kind of stuff does suggest something a little bit. It's more like a romantic scene than it is them, horse playing. And I didn't go into that film expecting that at all. Following a classic like Ghostbusters was followed a preemptive criticism insisting it was low. I would say the same thing about Ghostbusters 2, though, in terms of its ability to follow the original. Who Came from the Sea surprised the hell out of me. It is a surprising film. It is a seriously good film. It's a magnificent story, very well told, fascinatingly filmed. It is right up there with the best of the nasties, but sits oddly in that sort of respect, because it is. It's a much much more of a very well constructed, very interesting drama than it is a horror. And it was a shock that it ever made it into the Video Nasties list. But I think the kind of promotional material for it was like Molly has a way with knives and things like that. There's a lot of talk about castration and that kind of stuff, which was a link to the marketing material. And that drew the attention of the DPP, I guess. Oh dear. Original I Spit on Your Grave has a female lead and a female director. The original I Spit on Your Grave? Do you mean the first of the remakes or the actual original? Because the actual original was directed by Miyazaki, Tsugai. Which came from the sea, ate all of us, but she didn't bite me. Didn't eat me, yes. I was always fascinated by the film, and it was very, very hard to get hold of for a longest time until I found it on a Box of the Band 2. And that's the reason that I got Box of the Band 2, was specifically for that film. Spent far too much money on it. But now I think it's got a really good release. I would like a nice Blu-ray release of that. Would be really good. And that's the interesting thing with the Nasties. So many films with so many stories and so many perspectives. Yeah, there's a lot of trash in there, but there's also a lot of very interesting stuff. You look at Nightmare Maker, for instance. There's a very passionate story in there underneath all the mayhem and the madness. Don't Go in the House is an interesting psycho kind of take. Not nearly as intelligent, but it really does. That's another film that you could go into the whole kind of like the film is sort of comes over as being misogynist, but it's really just because it's through the eyes of the character who eventually gets his comeuppance and that kind of stuff. It's not like when I say that I go, yeah, and I enjoy it, that I'm actually kind of supporting the mindset of the protagonist or antagonist, depending. It's kind of one of those things which is, I think it's important to understand the perspective of the film. I think that's the point I need to make. So when it comes to like I Spit on Your Grave, understanding what it is that is going on in there, with Jennifer Hills, the character. That's another film that you could arguably call misandrist, oddly enough, because it takes her point of view. It is a film that is very much inhabits her world. Although she doesn't start off like that, she certainly ends up like that. Although specifically towards those guys, at least. But they are the entire world of that film for her. When it comes to the attack and onwards. Who complains about Ellen Ripley and Leia Organa? Ellen Ripley is a bit of an odd one, and I've said it before, I guess. But she was not written with a gender in mind. The characters were kind of like written to be sort of interchangeable, depending, so they could kind of like cast whoever they wanted, essentially. So Ellen Ripley. The character was actually written as a guy originally. I guess it would have been Alan Ripley. Ellen or Alan Ripley. Dear. Read the wiki page and sub to you. Now I have all 72 odd DVDs, free VHS for rare titles. Still lazy on the Section 3 stuff. Section 3 stuff is great because there's a lot of stuff on there which is just way balmier than any of the video nasties. I think the balmiest of the lot's got to be kind of like Cannibal Holocaust. Just that's the real kind of like killer for most people when it comes to watching the list. But Section 3 has some great stuff on there. Some absolutely amazing stuff. For the longest time, I've been wanting to do maybe Pink Flamingos because the BBFC case study cited it as a Section 3 title, and that wasn't on the list. So that would be an interesting one to visit. It's still cut in the UK. What, I Spit on Your Grave? Yes. Yeah, I can't see it getting an uncut version for a very long time, if at all. I've argued personally with the BBFC webmaster about that film, and they were adamant they'd made their mind up on what that film is, and I think they're wrong. And it doesn't seem to matter how much critical response they get. They don't seem to want to change their mind. The point is, Glenn Ellen Ripley is a female character. No one complained about that woman. No, there weren't. No. But there was. Could you argue that Alien's a strange one when it comes to that sort of stuff? It's not a particularly political movie, although it does imply certain things. Just because of the sort of sexuality of the whole film is kind of a little bit weird with Giger's alien is a deliberately very sexual kind of creature, and of course the scene, Lambert's death scene, which some people have gone, holy shit, that's uncomfortably close to being a rape scene. So yeah, but I don't think it's got a coherent kind of narrative on any of that kind of stuff. It just plays with certain things. I think the whole kind of the face hugger thing, and there's a lot of talk about that being a kind of a rape metaphor, which it sort of is, I guess. But it doesn't really use it for anything other than to make it a very uncomfortable experience. I think that's kind of what it's there for. Yeah, I heard John Hurt was a nice guy. A kind of a very classical type actor. They often are very nice. Aliens is a piss poor movie. Hate it. You just trying to start a fight. I prefer Alien to Aliens, and I have controversially been on record as saying I think Alien 3 is probably as good as Aliens in some respects. It's a flawed movie, but the ideas are interesting. I liked the atmosphere of it. I liked some of the darker takes of that film, which I kind of felt it was a sort of halfway house between Alien and Aliens, and an interesting one. But it's not loved very much, and I think I say that not to be controversial, but genuinely Alien 3 is, I find, a more interesting film. Not necessarily more entertaining, but certainly a more interesting film than Aliens, which is just, it's a balls out action film, which is great, but I find less interesting. Contamination is the film Alien wishes it was. Oh my god, that fucking film. Dear. Dogs, I never got into Tinker Tailor. That film, I'm not going to say it's a bad film, because I don't think it is, but it bored the everlasting piss out of me. I got about a third of the way through it and I just wanted it done. Yeah. It was a John Le Carre, isn't it? I just can't get into that political spy stuff. It just... Maybe I should give it another go at some point. Maybe if I'm in a better frame of mind, I'd actually have a better reception of that. I'll do that. That's a good thing to do occasionally, is, once in a while, revisit a film that you think you hate and see if you can find something to like in it. It's what I do a lot of the time when I'm reviewing a film. Aliens has a right go at men, and no one or two okay blokes doesn't cut it for me. No, I wouldn't say it was about men. I'd say it was about militarism. That's specifically what it's about. It's not about the guys. It's about the outfit. Because people have likened it to being James Cameron's Vietnam film, and I think that's a very good analogy. Funny enough, with that, Ripley gets to be a much more feminine character in a lot of respects. Badass, kind of strong as nails, kind of female character, but she has that relationship with Newt, which I'm always hot and cold on. I always find it a little bit hokey, but it does flesh out the character of Ellen Ripley a lot more. And that's probably one of the things that's missing in Alien 3, is she becomes a much more withdrawn character in a lot of respects. Yeah, Richard. Suggest we revisit Calamity of Snakes. It is a terrible, terrible film. It just features thousands of snakes getting murdered. And I put it that way because there was no point to what they were doing. I thought it was... I thought it was objectionable. And how often do I say that? I'd say I was quite offended by that film. Just because it's so callous to the living creatures. I mean, take the worst aspects of Cannibal Holocaust and then times it by a couple of hundred, and that's Calamity of Snakes. I just think it's very unethical. But I know you're kind of joking a bit, Richard, but Jesus Christ. H.R. Geiger always found fascinating as... or Giger, I should say, sex, but what's the origin of life? Sex, but what struck me about his images was how, despite being so horrific, it was so serene. Yes, there's a lot going on in his artwork. It's sort of violent and sexy and a reflection of a part of human existence. So, interesting. It's kind of perverse as well, which makes it sort of fun. James Cameron's Vietnam film was a Vietnam film. Rambo First Blood Part 2. Yeah, I guess, but Aliens has been kind of called a Vietnam film. And a much more serious one, because Rambo 2 isn't really a Vietnam film when it comes down to it. It's, not in any substantive... kind of thing. It's sort of a venue. Rambo 2 is likely one of the dumbest of the Rambo films. It is a guilty pleasure. I do enjoy it because it's so ridiculous and over the top. But it is kind of a stupid film. I think even Stallone kind of looks down on it somewhat. Although I have to say, the last Rambo, Last Blood. Oh, Jesus Christ. Ill-judged, I think. Giga was a horrible man having a go at Christians for no reason. Really? I did not know that. Oh, dear. So, about Alien 3 and Resurrection, they do show Ripley's character development. Resurrection, not so much for me. I quite strongly dislike that film. I didn't like the look. I didn't like the tone. The writing was all over the bloody place. I don't know what Ripley was in that film. I mean, it's not even Ripley. It's a clone of Ripley. So, But, I mean, if you enjoyed it, great. I found it pretty risible myself. And I've got 2 copies of it, I believe. This is my film collection, ladies and gentlemen. There are plenty of films up there I fucking hate. Oh, that's good to hear, Richard. I like how Charles Napier got a good role in Rambo 2. Yes. Yeah. I mean, I've got the VHS of Rambo 2 there because I had such kind of like... I have certain nostalgia for it. Particularly as it was kind of like one of the figureheads of the second video nasty scare in the 90s. That VHS kind of was one of those that they go, look how evil these things are. So it's not a particularly rare one, but it is the big box rental VHS, which is kind of cool. Okay, folks, I think we're going to get started with the film in just a moment. So get yourselves ready to start stuff. I'll give you a couple of minutes and then we'll get going. If you start giving us a thumbs up, and we will get started with The Hitcher, not the remake. Beer. You think it was a mistake to try and make Dune into a film? It's very hard to make Dune into a film in its entirety. There's no two ways about it. It's an interesting story. There's a lot of kind of contemporary politics going on in that, and it's just like taking this empire building and all that kind of stuff and going over into another world and stealing the resources and the fights between the various factions, which represents an awful lot of the Middle East. I mean, there's a reason why it's so steeped in Middle Eastern kind of imagery, including the deserts and some of the names, some of the words that they use. Prometheus. It showed promise with some ideas, but then kind of threw it out the window with some aborted writing. I was so disappointed with Prometheus. I've got Prometheus DVD, but there was I don't think I'm ever going to get Covenant. Okay, Collector Adam is ready. Is everybody else ready? Give us a quick thumbs up and then we'll get started. In fact, I'm just going to go grab another bottle of beer so I'm ready to go. There we go. Gladiator's ready. Okay. Brilliant. I'm wondering if my brother's in the audience. I suspect he is. Okay, so stand by to watch The Hitcher. We'll start on 5 and go on go. So 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go. Frank says, read the novel, simply way too much condensed to a 120-minute film. Yes, absolutely there is. It's a very full, very complicated book. I mean, the book's like that, bloody thick. It's huge. It's rivaling the bloody Bible for word count. But fascinating nonetheless, because it's got all that interesting kind of political parallels going on. Parallels with the real world. Well, did you see, was it Patty Jenkins talking about kind of filmmaking and having a problem with Netflix type kind of productions and that sort of stuff? It's like, yeah, everybody say hi to Gary just in case he's in the audience. Show my brother the love. I do love the opening to this film. I love the fact that there isn't much preamble. It's just kind of like you're dropped into a very familiar situation. Anyone who's done any significant amount of driving will kind of relate to this sort of experience of being on a long drive and struggling to kind of regain your concentration and that sort of thing. Oh, Gary might be here. He often just sits there and watches it in the background. It's fine. I've always kind of liked the lighting and stuff in this film. And the color palette's very kind of rich, generally speaking. It's just not one of these dreary kind of looking horror films. It's one of the things these days. It's all gonna kind of like kind of washed out or super hyper saturated and that kind of stuff. And it's got natural kind of color palette to it, but it's not dreary. It's not boring. There's depth to the shots. I mean, you get these big wide shots and to kind of like put him in context of where he is, but a lot of this film is really kind of close up and claustrophobic. Yeah, all right, Kieran. There's no need to get upset. There you go. Hello, Gary. There's something of the kind of old school fairy tale about this, isn't there? It's almost a Red Riding Hood kind of parable. My mother told me not to do this. My mother told me not to talk to the wolf. You always liked the colours in Vamp. Yeah, it's a very vibrant film, isn't it? My brother's the only one actually in my family who watches my stuff, so. And at this point, C. Thomas Howell fucked up. Yes, he did. God, it's just Rutger Hauer in this is just like, Jesus, he's fucking cold as hell. But he has those little breaks of warmth as well. It's not like he's completely inhuman. He has these little flashes of humanity, which actually kind of makes him a little bit more scary because you sort of go, he's not just a mindless murderer. He enjoys what he's doing. They're very different days, weren't they, dogs? The remake is not great. It's not the worst film I've ever watched, but where it's not derivative, it's just like kind of amping stuff up, and it's like it's such a waste of time. And I like Sean Bean as an actor, but he doesn't carry off the character as well as Howard did. And a lot of it's because we're comparing it to this. This is the film that we love and all that kind of stuff. And I always try to check that, but I never quite. I can never really sort of justify even speculating on Sean Bean being better than Rutger Hauer in this role. I heard that Hauer's supposed to be gay in this. Makes me enjoy this even more. There's a couple of bits. Well, there's one bit in particular which is coming up, where it's sort of he uses that as almost like a gay panic kind of thing, which we'll see in a minute. Wasn't Sean Bean in the remake? Yes, he was. I watched it because I was just curious to see what they did with it because I'd heard a bit about it. So I got it really, really cheap, and I watched it, and it was like, I say, not the worst thing I've ever watched, but definitely not up to this. It's this whole kind of question with, this character. How he's almost like a demon. He's kind of like, he's seductive when he wants to be, and then he's just on a dime will say something which you're not quite sure if you can take seriously. But my God, he's deadly serious. And Rutger Hauer's got that kind of look. He can be very, very warm at 1 second, and then just, well, did Blade Runner, he could be a robot the next. And this is the gay panic scene. And it's gay panic not for the audience, it's for this guy, the construction worker. So whether it's a gay gay character or not, I'm not entirely convinced. At least not on the strength of just sort of this moment. But I think he has an almost sort of weirdly sensual kind of relationship with his victims. He likes to play with them. Netherlands is a crap country. Let's face it. I'm not sure that's true. I've been over there. It was cool enough. I haven't spent a significant amount of time over there though, so I couldn't say either way. I'm sure it's got its charms. This is the interesting part of the dialogue, the stop me thing. It's just this sort of rather opaque kind of peek into his psyche. And that's kind of one of the things which is rather fascinating about this film is Rutger Hauer's character is kind of opaque. He's never sure about why it is he's doing it. Is he doing it just because he loves to do it? Is he doing it because it's a sort of suicide by proxy? That's another thing that sort of you could look at this character as being an aspect of the character. Do you think homosexuality is used to add to the horror of a character? It can be in some films. There's plenty of films I think that do use it as a way to dislike the character, or at least to kind of initiate a certain suspicion of the character. I don't think that's related just to horror, though. And again, when you have something like that, when you have a situation where a character does have a certain specific spike to their character, be it their sexuality or their kind of mental health or something like that, it doesn't necessarily mean that the film is kind of pointing at that type of person again. Be suspicious. Certainly some do. But done right, it's fair enough as part of a storytelling technique. But I think you have to be, these days particularly, not because of wokeness or anything, you should be get a bit more kind of like careful not to make that the be all and the end all of the character. You look at someone like Ed Gein, for instance, the real life killer. There's aspects of his personality which people kind of looked at and used it for their own political agendas. Do you think the Joker is coded as homosexual? I have no idea. I don't think he is. In fact, I'm pretty certain he isn't. I think he is generally, I guess, a sociopath. I think that's exactly what he's kind of like coded as. Oh, he's flamboyant as hell, but I don't think that really kind of necessarily reflects on his sexuality. I think his, if you were looking at the Joker in sexuality, I think it's almost a really perverse kind of sexualization of violence, if you like, but that's about it. I guess some people it will. Certainly, when you look at plenty of films where there's a gay character, for instance, that aspect of their character can be used as a flag, if you like, for him being some sort of negative personality, which I think is unfortunate. I like to think we know a little bit better these days. I think you're quite right, Frank. Ed Gein wasn't transit. No, that's not what I'm getting at. Although there was certain kind of aspects of that of his behaviour that were used as a kind of, well, this is the kind of person that these are. That's unfortunately the true end of it. What he was is a very complicated thing. Yeah. You have to look into the kind of like a lot of the background of who that guy was and the situation he grew up in and all that kind of thing. But whatever he was specifically was can't be reduced down to kind of like something as simple as sexual preference in the normal sort of sense. See, this is one of those things. One of the big differences between this and a remake is that this film is significantly less gory, with on-screen gore. That is, it just suggests a lot of it. A lot of it is off-camera. And there was a few reasons for that, I believe, because there's a particular scene which comes up much later in the film that was much more explicitly realised in the remake than it was in this. And I can't remember if it was partly because they wanted to sort of like tone things down so they get a slightly lower rating from the MPAA, but the net result of all of it is that the film leaves a lot more to your imagination, and so often the imagination comes up with worse things. You don't need to see that cut up family and that kind of stuff. You just need to see the suggestion of it, and your mind fills in those blanks. Shouldn't try to understand criminals, we should punish them. Can't agree with you there. I think understanding a problem is going some way to dealing with the problem that created them. Sometimes people are naturally bad, but Other times it's a product of what brought them to that situation. I think, it's like when you're talking about terrorists and stuff like that, trying to understand what it is that makes these people what they are is a big part of understanding how you go about solving the problem in general. However you feel about that individual. Yes, there should be punishment for wrongdoing, absolutely. But I'm a strong believer that the justice system should be about correcting those things. Not just retribution, but trying to make it not happen again. I'm not biblical enough to vouch for the lake of fire, throw them in there forever thing. You're in a bad mood tonight, aren't you, Kieran? It's not me chastising you. A little concerned about you, to be honest. What do you think about the Taliban? Do you think it's right the world leaders are willing to even talk to them? If you're going to make any progress, I don't think bombing them forever and ever and ever is going to make a slightest bit of difference. I think progress. You look at kind of how the Cold War ended. It wasn't ended with bombs. It was ended, I glibly put it, with Levi jeans. People wanted more. They wanted to have things. They wanted to be able to make something of themselves. So the prospect of democracy was an attractive thing. I mean, they've taken some steps back, to say the least, recently, but it's kind of odd. I've been very critical of stuff like Christianity, but sometimes I feel like I'm more Christian than a lot of Christians. I don't mean that in a trite kind of way. I'm not trying to be insulting. I do believe in people being able to redeem themselves. I do believe that humanity does have good in it. It's not going to be an overnight thing, Richard. Maybe it will never happen. But war is not the way forward. You can't wage endless war. I'm not saying the Taliban are good people, and believe me, I'm not. Some of the stuff they do is pretty grotesque and awful. But I suspect that they don't want to be pariahs in the world. That's the one chance, I think, is that if they want to be players in the world stage, then they will have to kind of learn to be citizens of the world, I guess. It's a very different kind of war, though, Frank. I think there was a veteran who put it really well in that, things like World War One and Two, and most major wars were fought between people who wore uniforms. It was a very organized kind of happening, and what's happening with, be it with Afghanistan, or kind of ISIS, and although ISIS and the Taliban are at odds with each other, they don't like each other. But war against those kind of guerrilla kind of forces is not the same as fighting a war against an army. This is not country against country kind of stuff. Practicalities are kind of weird. We're always in those, Byron. Nothing's changed. Now, I don't think anyone's going to be overthrown in the US in a hurry. I really don't. On a lighter note, are you planning on doing any archery again soon? I would like to. Hopefully, I might see if I can persuade Meg to go again. I'd like to get my own bow, actually. Although excuse me, though it's an expense to get one. It makes going to practice sessions and stuff a lot cheaper. I would tend to agree with that sentiment, Frank. I think it is important to understand the worst of acts. When you look at the history of Middle East and stuff like that, I'd say a good starting point's 1950s in Iran and what the US and Britain did to them. You start to understand the progression stuff when you understand that. Oh, Kieran. You silly sausage, you. Now that looks like a damn fine meal. I kind of want a burger now. But getting back to the film, now we've gone through the heavy politics. I don't mind talking about this sort of stuff. I'm just always kind of wary, it's not necessarily the right venue for it. The characters are kind of John Ryder is an oddly presented one. I said earlier, it's like he's human at one moment and he's just demon at others. And he kind of works like this sort of almost force of nature throughout this film. He's constantly this boogeyman in the shadows, pops out when you least expect him. And there's always this feeling that even when he's not on screen, that he's just round the corner. He's constantly got this presence. You always feel like he's around throughout this film. There's an argument really that the film really is Halsey's point of view, very solidly so. To the point that you kind of should ask yourself, is he a reliable narrator when it comes to this story? How much of this character of John Ryder is genuinely like that, or is this, Halsey's kind of imagination sort of bigging him up as he's retelling it? Thank you, Kerry. Does he, Byron? I wonder why. She's an interesting character, you know. Jennifer Jason Leigh's character in this is kind of interesting in the way she's sort of handled throughout the story. And she's this very strong, confident young lady. Isn't terrorized, generally speaking, but almost goes down the line of it's like a little adventure for this country girl who doesn't see an awful lot of anything. Can you imagine how much of a life this girl has in this diner? God, American police. I'm gonna shoot. I don't care whether I'm stood right next to this petrol petrol pump. Or sorry, gas pump. Little hint, it's not gas, it's a liquid. The more you know. So coming off like Josh Hadley though, the amount of times he rips on me for English, shall we say? I think it's why people are so frightened by Lovecraft stories, how terrifying when a terrible happens, because it's simply a force of nature, no malice. Well, it's one of the things that's really fascinating about John Ryder as a character is there's this sort of suggestion that he's partly doing this thing because he needs someone to kill him and he can't do it himself. It's like an extended form of suicide, but I'm going to take as many people with me as I go. And that's kind of terrifying when you've got somebody who doesn't care about their own life so much that they are willing to do anything to take as many people with them. I think that's what, one of the scary things about, you get these kind of attacks and stuff like that happen when suicide bomber or something like that is that person just goes, I don't matter. And I've got a job to do. Thank you, Frank. I have to say I do love the differences. Some people find it really annoying. I don't. I actually find it quite fascinating. Josh is constantly, it's aluminum. Not in Britain, dear. The character arc of Halsey is kind of fascinatingly handled. It's one of those things where it changes just slowly but surely throughout the film, and he's just this innocent kind of creature at the beginning, and as things happen, he becomes sort of a victim and terrified, and then becomes more forced by circumstance to be kind of self-assured. or desperate even. I'm glad I learned the Queen's English and not the American bastardization of English. It's funny, actually. I found out some time ago that I said to Josh that whole kind of affectation that you get of the police rather than the police. The police is actually of British origin, apparently. Colour Outer Space is a strange little film. I guess it depends which one you're actually talking about, but guy looks like Razor's out along Good Friday. God, Jaws 3. Oh, it's a crap sequel. Notable only for the fact that it was done in 3D. Talking about the Richard Stanley film. Yeah. They're kind of weird, disorientating types of films. I've been very tempted recently to do a video on kind of modern horror films, or kind of like recent horror films, because I really believe that the horror genre has taken quite a resurgence, and I think there's a lot of examples of films that will be regarded as classics, with a very contemporary style as well, very experimental looking, interesting. Not necessarily the best films in the world, but very adventurous, and that's refreshing. Even if I don't particularly like the film, I like to see the directors trying something. God, I love British law enforcement. Stop, or I say stop again. You have been warned. We have our bad eggs as well, but it is amazing that the police can resolve some astonishingly violent situations without loss of life. Doesn't always work out, but no, you say what you want, Frank. Well, within reason, obviously. We keep it friendly here. Yeah, Kieran, the fact that this is one of the things. It's again, it's Ryder being this almost supernatural kind of creature. The idea that he could sneak in silently and do all of this. Oh God, don't even get me started on that. No, 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 Byron. I'll leave you with this thought. The fact that there are now import charges from Europe, that the thing that I just bought from Germany is 90 quid odd extra because of import charges. That kind of pisses me off. Oh, you saw Willy's Wonderland. I think I want to watch that. I think that's a perfect sort of vehicle for Nicolas Cage in Nicolas Cage mode. Although, actually, I think he's very kind of played down in that, isn't he? I could be wrong. Hello, Zammy. See, for Halsey sort of walking through this bloody police station like this, it's like everybody's gone, apparently gone. It's all quiet, and he's wondering, are they just going to jump out from a door and shoot me? Got no idea what the hell's going on. You can imagine how terrifying that'd be. Oh, man's best friend. See, that's how slasher films should kind of like do their stuff, really. Instead of having them dropping out the ceiling and cupboards and stuff, it's just that the character didn't see him because they were kind of obscured somewhere. Yeah, yeah. That's what I understand on that. I don't think he says very much in Mandy either. Nicolas Cage gets a lot of stick for being a bad actor. I don't think he is. He just makes some. I think with a really good director behind him, reeling him in where he needs to be reeled in and allowing him to go full on Cage when it's appropriate. He makes for a very entertaining actor. He annoys the hell out of a lot of people, and I can totally understand it. But for me, I find him, at the very least, entertaining. I don't think he'd give a shit in Left Behind, though. Okay. They really do make really nice use of the scenery, don't they? Is that really? Is that quintessentially kind of American landscape? I would love to be on a motorbike ride around countryside like that. This is where he finds out that the cop car is completely out of I was going to say out of gas, out of petrol. He gets about 2 miles down the road and that's it. Richard, yeah. We can't get enough Al Cliver on this channel, can we? I seem to remember they really screwed up this aspect of the story in the remake as well. Excuse me. I will definitely watch it, Frank. I'll get hold of that. It's just one of those dick moves, isn't it? It's like it just shoots the policeman in the car. Just goes straight past him and then just leaves him to it. Ryder really does have that cat and mouse thing going on, doesn't he? In a very literal sense, it's that kind of you see a cat play with a mouse, and it's almost torturing them. It's no secret how is bloody Phantom in this. It certainly comes over as that, doesn't he? He's this almost nebulous type creature. He's always there. He's always just kind of like round the corner, and he'll pick his moment. Now, obviously, Hauser is not thinking, kind of straight and that sort of thing. And if you kind of look at the film as being the story being kind of his recollection of it, you can sort of justify some of the decisions that he makes. Like now he's walking away from the police car. If he'd had any sense, he'd stay by that because you'd know that they'd be able to tell it wasn't him that shot the cops. His gun hadn't been fired and all that kind of stuff, and eventually they would find out that it wasn't him. But obviously he's got other concerns. I mean, not only is he kind of on the border of hysteria, he's not feeling like he'd be safe even in police custody. He's got goddamn good reason for thinking that. So, logically speaking, it's an odd decision, but it's kind of psychologically, it's perfectly justifiable. Frank says this is the scene that disturbed me the most. It's a wonderful thing about this film is it does a lot with very little. It's generally speaking very much not a showy film. I just I love it. I kind of God, he's a cold, cold bastard. Yeah. God, he's ice cold, isn't it? It's just like, wow. It's just that look on his face. I kind of, God, you're a poor sap. And you got Jose, who's just like, understandably, just a wreck. These two guys act against each other so perfectly in this film. What film you doing next? I have no idea. Review-wise, Exorcist 2. Whatever we do for the next one of these, I'm not entirely sure. I tend to stew over it for a week or so. It's not great for the algorithm. Yeah, I guess so, Richard. I never really kind of made that connection, but yeah, I see where you're coming from. Frank says that it's a strange phenomenon in the human brain, isn't it? Things that are mundane, ordinary to us being made sinister scares us to death. Yeah, the familiar with when you take the familiar and you twist it, you just make it slightly uncanny, for want of a better word. It kind of upsets your expectations. He gets on the bus and goes into the toilet in there. You kind of half expect him to sort of lift the seat, and there'll just be like Ryder under there going, "Hello." It did take him a while for the coffee. What about Rocky Horror Picture Show one night, Glenn? Uh, if we do one on Halloween, if we can find a copy of it online, particularly. That'd be a good Halloween one, wouldn't it? What day is Halloween on? It's a Sunday night. I do believe that is the reference, Frank, yes. Film's probably ahead of its time, so many nutters out in society now. I don't think it's anything new. We just hear about them a lot more. It's one of those things, it's that we hear a lot more about things that go on in the world. It's like there's this sort of conspiracy, I say conspiracy theory, sort of is, but the end of days kind of theories go, look, there's so many more earthquakes happening now, and this and that and the other, these natural disasters, and it's more a case of we're more aware of them because there's better equipment that detects them, there's better reporting, all that kind of stuff. Perhaps go for a double bill on Halloween night. Well, let's have a think about that. Pretty sure it got worse. I don't think it really. Honestly, I don't think it has. I think it's just that we're more aware of those things now. You get the occasional Anders Brevis and Ed Geins and that kind of stuff, but they're pretty rare. We have a distorted view of crime and stuff like that in this world, because crime is what makes the news. Of course, we all get to see the news because it's everywhere. Whether it's on YouTube, whether it's on Facebook or the mainstream media and stuff like that. There's a reason why the phrase "if it bleeds, it leads" is a thing. I don't think we've done Blue Velvet as a watch along. I did it as a commentary track at one point. You having tech issues with your scanner? Oh, jeez. Yeah, they're always boring. She's very understanding for someone she hardly knows. Yeah, there is an aspect of the character that like you say, this is almost like an adventure for her. There's a naivety to the character that she lives a very boring life. She works in a diner in the middle of nowhere. To say the least, that's not going to be the most exciting lifestyle. So when this sort of walks into her life, yeah, she's going to potentially, for the sake of the story, I guess, in some respects, but she finds this adventure to go on. Imagine if David Lynch had made The Hitcher. Swear the setting's the same in Hands of Steel, Sergio Martin. I couldn't honestly tell you. I would imagine a lot of these areas look pretty damn similar. It's a wonderful, desolate location. I would seriously love to visit an area like this. There's something about these just sort of vast landscapes of next to nothing, which is quite appealing to me. The Lyncher. There's nearly a 3 hour long cut of Blue Velvet on YouTube. Really? I don't know how long the version I've got is. It's a damn good film. So this scene's basically one of those another one of those moments where it's Ryder kind of really just fucking with him. It's that again. It's that cat playing with a mouse kind of thing. Erase the hitch. Oh, nice one. Drop that gun. And he finally did the smart thing. That is a hell of a stunt. Just crashing the two cars like that. It's like GTA 5, the cars slowly breaking apart. It's another example, I think, in this film where they really do sort of hammer home the violence without actually seeing, massive amounts of bodily violence. As car chases go, that is a pretty brutal one. You're probably not far off with that. It is one of the things about this film is that it really does show what you can do with relatively little money if you've got, decent writing and great directing. So it's one of those cinematic tropes, isn't it? The helicopter that's constantly flying, about 20 foot above the ground level. If that. I mean, Jesus Christ, that helicopter was low. Ah, okay. That sounds absolutely awful, Richard. I'm probably going to have to watch that now. I still doubt it will knock my top spot for worst films ever. It's just an ice cold bastard, isn't he? See, that's one of those rare times where you see the helicopter actually hit the ground. Because usually what they do is obviously they fly it behind a hill and then set off a pyrotechnic. And here you see the thing go bang. Very well realised. Of course, it's one of those big killers in filmmaking, is helicopters, and the Twilight Zone and so on and all that kind of stuff. Airwolf had a fatal accident. Copter, yes. Oh, let's go. Yeah, just that moment. One line, 2 words, signalling a massive change in the character. And I've always got the feeling, that Ryder is one of the things he's trying to do is make Halsey like him. So I always kind of get the feeling that Halsey's that Ryder's a very lonely character. That's partly why he has this kind of death wish sort of approach to life. I don't mean in the film sense, obviously. Helicopters kill celebrities on an alarming rate. It's either that or quad bikes. Either kills them or damages them. This is one of the cliche moments in the film. Whether one of the characters is like desperate to call home or somewhere like that. It's a bit of a trope. I always felt Jennifer Jason Leigh really should have been a much more prominent actress than she really turned out to be. Never realised it was a comedy. Okay. Yeah, there was a few things which changed from the original treatment, as far as I understand. They altered scenes and didn't kind of go for the kind of blood and guts and a whole bunch of decisions that kind of went into this movie. It made it better. But it's good that they didn't do a sex scene in this. Didn't need it. It's a theory that Ryder is a manifestation of Halsey's schizophrenia. That's an interesting idea. Though, I mean, I don't know if it completely flies with me, but it is an interesting idea. there are interesting things which are going on in the film in terms of the relationship, what violence does to people, and being exposed to it. You can certainly read that into this. Yeah, I'm not sure I buy it either. I think it's a little bit of a reach, but because that would sort of imply that the character is particularly evil. And I kind of look at Ryder as much as being a sort of manifestation of violence. This almost like an angel of violence. Scanner's working. Well done. It's weird, isn't it? Just how sort of omnipresent that Ryder is. He could just appear in the fucking room like that. Just there is something kind of ghost-like about the guy. It's just fucking cold because he just gets down there and he lies with her for a while and that. He's that cold. For me personally, Ryder is someone who wants to die, but it's too cowardly to actually kill himself. He wants someone else to do it. I think, yeah, you're kind of right. I think he does want to die. But he wants to die in a kind of way that takes somebody with him. And not in a sense that he wants to kill somebody as he gets killed by that person, but more he wants to corrupt them. He wants to sort of live on in that person's mind. It's almost like, kind of like trying to find a different kind of life, but after death. And there's this sort of sense that it's almost this really perverse gift that he's trying to give to Halsey, to know what it is that he is. Someone who'd otherwise do death by a cop. I think not so much, Iris. I think because, like I say, I think he almost wants to pass on his kind of murderous sort of thing, the knowledge of what it is to kill someone, to someone else. It's like he wants to take him down with him. If he did that with a cop, the chances are the cop would, more or less forget it within a week. At least that's the kind of image that is projected, that a cop will kill a criminal and then not worry about it. And I don't think he wants that. He wants to be significant in someone's life. It's like Duel, only full on horror. Yeah. You could almost say, Frank, think of it like he's trying to pass on a kind of bad karma. Um, it's pretty horrible scene, this, isn't it? It's like, ooh. Bit like a cross between Duel and the Terminator. Yeah. The Duel comparison I can um, certainly see. This, although obviously this killer's got a face, but it's almost it's kind of funny in some respects because in Duel the bad guy is the truck really. When it comes down to it, you've got a human face to this one, but you don't really know who this guy is, and you can't be sure about why it is he's doing it. So there is that very, kind of close comparison that you can make. Right back. Is that the sheriff from the Blob? I think it is, actually. Certainly looks like him, doesn't it? What a bastard it is, isn't it? It's like kind of... Yeah, I want you to kill me. But when you do, you're going to be killing her as well. And you can really kind of feel for Halsey. He's constantly in an unwinnable position. But Ryder never wants to finish it like that. It's like, wow. And every time it's so tantalisingly close because yes, he could wipe him out with the squeeze of a trigger at this point, and he's begging him to do it, but he can't do it. Like I said, that scene where she gets pulled apart by the truck. I think there was plans to actually kind of make it more graphic, and they certainly do in the remake. But I'm kind of glad they didn't, because you really don't want to see that character get hurt. I mean, it happens, but I don't think there's anything to be gained from the audience watching. The details of that. It's happened. It's horrible anyway. Plus, your mind's already kind of filling in the blanks again. Oh, you're probably right, Frank. I've luckily never had to be in that situation. But there is a reason why, armed forces are put through all sorts of kind of training. I think there's a natural inclination to not pull a trigger on someone. I'm just going to check to see if I can find out whether or not that is the same actor in the Blob. Hitcher. So the guy in the Blob is Jeffrey DeMunn. It is. Well spotted. I was rejected by the military as well. I went for a job as airload master for the RAF at one point, but my eyesight wasn't good enough. I wanted to be flying if I was going to be in the armed forces. It was probably for the best as well, because probably not the best person for taking orders. Glenn wanted to be Maverick in Top Gun. No, I wouldn't have been a pilot, but airload master is the guys that load the aircraft, make sure the balance is correct and all that sort of stuff, and deal with all that sort of end of things, but also operate winches and drop loads from aircraft, that kind of stuff. That would have been cool as shit, that would have. Doubtless compares, but I was a hunter. It never became easy for me to kill an animal. I think, in that sort of respect, we get so complacent now, where that you can just nip down the superstore and pick up a steak or whatever. You don't have to get your hands dirty, so to speak. I've always kind of felt that the best hunters are the ones that respect the creatures. I never like seeing those guys that run around like just killing animals for sport. You worked for the MOD. I probably nearly killed an animal with the bow that I was using the other week. I did miss the target a few times. Against fox hunting, are we, Glenn? Yes, actually, I am. I don't buy the whole kind of vermin control thing. There's an argument to be made for deer hunting and a few forms of hunting where it's a case of controlling population, stuff like that. I'm not entirely anti-hunting, put it that way, but fox hunting's just about being cruel. Or at least having fun at the expense of an animal that's essentially defenceless. Seems unsporting to me. Oh God, Richard. I had a couple of times though, because when you draw a bow, you have to keep your elbow right up, right? So you get your hand out like that, and you got to get your elbow right up, because if you don't, then you bring your hand down, right? So a few of my shots went a bit high. I lost one arrow. It wasn't shooting at a target. It was not a flat target. It's shooting at a zone at distance and that kind of stuff. And I went onto the 46-pound bow, which is like the heaviest that they had. And God, the first shot from that just went off into the distance. I don't get the feeling. No, windscreens don't work that way. Well, we could have a night where it's GBH and Mad Foxes. 2 video nasties. Well, 1 video nasty, 1 section 3. Well, both section 3 actually, come to think of it. That was a great film, though, wasn't it, GBH? So after going through all that, he's still kind of like, together enough to keep fucking with him. How did he escape? He slipped his cuffs. That is one thing that they show you a little bit more of in the remake. And you could sort of go, well, that's better because it shows you how he actually kind of did this. But like I say, there's this thing about this film where Ryder is this sort of force of nature type character. He's almost a kind of like phantom. So he can do these almost superhuman things. Now we're really going to work out. Tell you what, Richard, we'll do that on a special night. Maybe that'll be a Christmas or a New Year's type thing. So before I say it again, what use of the locations they've done in this? It is one of those surprisingly good films, though, isn't it, Richard GBH? I mean, it looks like shit. You know, it's very low budget and all that kind of stuff, but it's a film that has an enthusiasm to it that's kind of infectious. Ryder got his wish. He won. GBH on DVD or Blu-ray yet? I don't think so. See, you got that moment where he kind of throws the cuffs to the ground. Um, for me, that's enough to explain kind of like how he managed the escape. Seems to be one of his things. He managed to kind of break the cuffs, or slip the cuffs, and that's one of the things that the remake kind of made all too obvious. And like that, it's done. Well, that was fun. Just lights a cigarette and job done. Oh boy. Let's take these off a minute. There we go. Yeah. To me, Watership Down was has a happy ending. Hazel saves his people, they thrive, and he lives a long life and goes peacefully. Yeah, that was one of the more traumatizing films I ever watched in my life. That and E.T. It always amazes me when you kind of like people say, "How can you watch these movies that you watch? How can you watch something like a Serbian film or Cannibal Holocaust?" And you know, my mind just sort of goes, "Yeah, Watership Down was far more traumatizing, terribly difficult to sit through in some parts. I mean, it is pretty violent, apart from anything else." And to my shame, I have not watched The Plague Dogs, and I really ought to watch The Plague Dogs. I've been meaning to do that for years. I'm going to have to get hold of that at some point soon and watch that. But, yeah. But I hope you enjoyed that. I think we're going to call it an evening at this point. And hopefully I will be back next week. Next week's a little bit crazy. Because I've got a fuck ton of stuff to do at work. But I should be doing something Friday. I'll let you know by Thursday whether or not we'll be doing anything this week. Hopefully I will make some serious progress over the weekend for the Exorcist 2 review, and then Exorcist 3, and then knife configuration. Just checking because my brain just went into spasm for no good reason. But yeah, we'll call it an evening there, and I'll say thank you very much for joining, and I hope you have a lovely weekend, and I hope the rest of the week when you're back at work and all that kind of stuff is not too traumatic. But as always, leave any suggestions at the Ramblaholics. For those who are wanting to kind of join in on that page, then friend me on Facebook, and then I will send you a link to the Ramblaholics. When you friend me, just leave me a message saying add me to the Ramblaholics, and then yeah, that kind of thing. So good night, folks. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. Take care, and yeah, have a good one.